Okay, I hope this works today. Hi, guys. I don't know if anyone's in here yet. Oh, okay. There's a little bit of a delay going on the live stream, so I'm going to wait and see if anyone arrives and we can get started. Oh, got somebody here. Wonderful. Okay. So, if anyone is coming here because they saw what I wanted to talk about earlier, I was typing up my newsletter today. So, for those of you who aren't subscribed, and before I go any further, if anyone can't hear me, let me know. And oh, look, our chat is working. Okay, that's what I was most concerned about, is whether or not the chat was going to start working. So, hi, Kelly. That means I can kind of look away from my screen over here, which I'm going to go ahead and do. Again, if no one can hear me, if there's any problem, let me know. I'll do my best to fix it. Sorry, guys, I'm kind of pretty new to streaming, so I'm just going to muddle through this. But what I wanted to talk about, I recently finished my Dokiri Bride series, book 5, 6 if you include the prequel novella. And I don't know about everyone else, but personally, I am a... Thanks, Kelly. You like my bookshelves. I appreciate that. No, but anyway, I happen to be a really big fan of libraries, as most of us readers, I imagine, probably are. And so as soon as I got Sigvard published and closed out the Dokiri Bride series, and thank you, Kelly. The sound is good. I appreciate that. I like I said, I'm super nervous right now. I'm trying not to be obvious with how nervous I am. But anyway, wow, you guys are going to realize real quickly that I'm better writing than I am talking off the cuff. But anyway, I wanted to go ahead and donate my books to the libraries within my state where I live. And I figured that maybe some of the libraries wouldn't be down for it, but I didn't expect there to be too much of an issue with at least throwing it out there. So what happened is a week after I published Sigvard, I went ahead and I emailed like all the big libraries in my state, including, smaller ones like where I live. And I basically was asking what process I needed to go through in order to donate books, because I wanted to donate my paperbacks, of course. And then also I wanted to see if there was a way for me to purchase my own audiobooks and ebooks and put them into the digital library system through the Overdrive app, which for any non-Americans listening, I'm not sure how global Overdrive is, but it's just the online service that most library systems use to deliver digital content, like ebooks and audiobooks. I'm going to talk about this in my letter on Friday, so I don't want to be redundant, but basically what happened is I received a flood of rejection emails that weren't the most flattering in some of their presentation, if I heard back from anybody at all. However, from my local library, I did receive an email that says this, and I am going to find a way to show this to you guys without revealing the name of the sender. So if you give me just a moment here. Aha, I got it. All right, so unfortunately my camera is covering up a lot of it, but I'm going to read it out loud. Hello, Denali. Here's our book donation policy for your review. Although we typically do not purchase self-published materials, since you are a local author and your genre usually circulates well here, we would accept the paperback donations. You would want to make them to my attention so that I was to be sure to see them. In your phone message, you mentioned Overdrive. Those are purchased through our digital downloads collection development group based on popularity and Patreon, wow. Patron requests made through their Overdrive accounts. She goes on to, and I know she didn't type this herself. I'm so sorry. You guys are hearing one of the goblins having a good old time up there. Anyway, I know she didn't type this herself. I know it's copy pasted because I saw similar information, actually verbatim, same information at some of the other library systems. Not my public library from whom I received this letter. But I'd like to draw your attention here because, they said, we gladly accept donations. And then they say, books that are in excellent condition, audiobooks, and local history and genealogy material. And then down here, they say, we are not able to accept materials that exhibit signs of smoke, mold, pests, water damage, encyclopedias, reference books, textbooks, audiobooks on cassette, movies on VHS, magazines of any kind. At the very bottom, we have items that have been withdrawn from any library collection, and sold previously. So if this book was, removed from a library and sold at like a library book sale, we don't want it back. And then right here near the bottom, we have this glorious little line, self-published materials. So, yeah, right, you got it. Right under smoke, mold, pests, and water damage, VHS tapes, stacks of magazines, and audio cassettes. We also are not able to accept any self-published materials. Automatic denial. So, let's switch back here. Naturally, I was a little insulted, I guess. And hi, Talis, I see you're in the chat. Sorry, I switched screens and I couldn't see the chat before, but now I can. Anyway, naturally, I was a little bit offended. Not so much personally as I was, I guess, suppose generally for the indie author community. As an indie author myself, obviously, I speak with a lot of indie authors. I work with a lot of indie authors. I love indie authors. And most of the time when I read genre fiction, I'm reading indie authored books. I think they're pretty good. It really got me to thinking, and I'm sorry, Nick's speaking. Hi, Nick. So could you bring in the series in person? Oh, I'm getting to that. They don't look at all selfish. Yeah, I'm getting to that. Just you wait. So spoiler alert, I went in person to the librarians today and I hunted that particular librarian down. So I'm getting to that. But now where was I? Sorry, guys. I lose my train of thought like the wind blows and it's gone. So it was a mistake for me to put my chat up here, but I'll do my best to get back onto the path here. And let me think. Okay. I was thinking after I received these emails and all these rejections, obviously I was very dejected. I had been so excited to donate my books just because, again, I love libraries. They've done a lot for me in my estimation growing up. So I wanted to give back a little bit. But then to be immediately met with this attitude of, we don't even want to look at your indie books, And the only exception being made was with my local library because I happen to be local. We'll make an exception for you, I guess, because you live right here and because your genre circulates well. Now, keep in mind, I had linked my book in my original email, so if she bothered to look at it, which I imagine she probably would have, I would have if somebody was like, I'd like to donate these books. It would have gone to my Amazon page, which at the time it had like over 400 reviews, 4.5 star rating. Like this is obviously, a pretty decently put together book, if I do say so myself. But she's still very much like, well, we'll make an exception for you. And I'm thinking, if you saw my book at all, you realize that the book is, again, decently put together. It's presentable. It's professional. It's very widely circulated globally on the planet, not just, within your library system. And yet I was still met with this attitude that, indie, just automatic dismissal. And I thought to myself, what can I do about this within my own community to increase awareness of indie books, of the legitimacy of the indie author scene. And I'm going to check the chat real quick and make sure I'm not, Yeah, lately I've read pretty much everything. Yes, same here. If I'm gonna, I love indie books. And I'm sorry, I get terribly derailed. Excuse me. Please don't anyone take this as like, don't talk to me. I love having something to go off of. I'm just a little bit nervous right now. So if I get a little more used to live streaming, I'm sure that I won't be thrown off every time, every time I'm distracted by something. But thank you for your patience and bearing with me. Anyway, what I ended up doing was I put together a self-publishing course, part 1 of 4 parts that I planned and kind of outlined. I only did the actual put the whole material together for 1 of the 4 parts that I had planned. I had a lot of other things that I probably should have been doing, but I tend to get fixated on things that I get very emotional about, and I was definitely very emotional about this. I felt passionate is a nice word for it. And I was thinking, I'm going to just host like a indie publishing educational course and then put it on for my community. And anybody who's ever thought about publishing or just, wants to know what their options are, can come to it and I can help them in any way. I really like to teach. Someday maybe I might get a platform together where I can help other people with their indie author careers in particular. But just to do that personally for my community would be really special, and I thought a great opportunity to raise awareness. So I emailed back the librarian and I told her thank you, and then I gave her my idea for having a indie publishing course. And I tried to stress in as tactful a way as I could manage, which is not very tactful. I'm not a tactful person, guys, that without bragging, that these books do very well. They move a lot of copies. Because I wanted her to take what I was saying seriously and take seriously the fact that I felt like I have something valuable to offer to the community. I'm not just wanting to show up at the library so I can have a captive audience to talk about myself. Like, I really want to bring value to the people who might be curious and interested enough to show up. Well, to no one's great surprise, I never received an email back. Which is funny because the first email I received within like an hour or 2, and then I never received one back. And this was, again, the Monday, I think, after I published Sigvard or something like that. It was very soon, so it was a while back. And of course, I got all fired up. Again, that's why I ended up making the course, because I'm like, gosh, just, people don't know any better. Put it together. I've been very busy. I've been very distracted lately, but I'm like, I'm going to get my books together and I'm going to take them in person, I'm going to make her take this seriously. Well, today I had a doctor's appointment. It went way quicker than I expected it to. And lest anyone think that I leave my children home alone when they sleep. No, I still had a little time before my kids woke up. My husband works at home, so he's still here. Kids are not alone. I was like, you know what? I'm going to stop at my library and I'm going to drop off these books and I'm going to have a conversation. Now, let me check the chat and come back to that. She might not know what having that many reviews on Amazon means if she usually reads paperbacks bought from brick and mortar stores or borrowed from the library. Yeah, it kind of blows my mind that, people might not know, have like, that, 500-ish reviews is a lot for like any book, indie or trad. It's like, it's a respectable amount. It's not we don't even want to consider your donation kind of amount of reviews probably. But I think that might just be because I spend so much time on Amazon charts and Amazon books and looking at indie books. I literally have a automatic browser button on my Chrome that takes me straight to fantasy romance Amazon top 100 chart, because I look at it every day usually, sometimes several times a day, because I just want to know what's trending, what's going on, like what people are interested to read, what they're excited about. But I think that for maybe not necessarily all librarians, but people who are really wrapped up in a more traditional world, and because I met the librarians today, they are they are of an older generation. Let's face it, like indie's kind of a relatively new thing. especially operating at the mass that it is now within genre fiction. So, yeah. Talus says that's an awesome idea. Thank you, Talus. I don't know. I don't know if everyone agrees. And again, I'll get to that part of the story in a minute. And then Kelly says, if you do host a course, you should offer the option to join by webcam, like through Zoom. Yeah, that would be a great idea. Just, especially with COVID. I know I was wearing my mask in the library, but I think I was the only person wearing a mask in the library. I just assumed that it would be required, but I guess not. But I'm sure there are a lot of people who are a little nervous about going out right now. Thank you, COVID. Anyway, so today, I'm sorry this story is taking so long. If you guys are getting sick of it, I'll try to finish it up. But no. So I had my books in the car already because I've been looking for an opportunity. I called ahead of time as I was on my way just to make sure that the correct person was there. Found out she was, kept going. And I went to the adult reference desk. And as soon as she and the librarian who was sitting with her saw me, because of course I made eye contact, I had this big stack of books in my arms and I waved at them like, hey, they're like, she's on a mission. I'm like, yes, I am. Hi, nice to meet you. So I asked her, I said, I introduced myself, said I'm Denali. You received my email a couple of weeks ago. I don't know if you remember me. She's like, oh, yes. And then she saw the books and she's like, oh, wow. Okay. So you have like the whole series to donate, not just the book. And she got up and it was I don't know how else to describe it other than it was kind of an awkward experience for a few minutes because she got up, she took the stack of books and she was kind of stuttering over what she was saying a little bit and just like looking I don't know, just extremely uncomfortable. And she started paging through the first couple of books. She asked what the reading order was. I told her. And she didn't even look like in the books. She just looked at like the front matter, the copyright page, the table of contents, kind of like she was almost just checking to make sure that like all the pieces of a book were there. And then as soon as she saw the table of contents, she goes, oh, okay, well, thank you. And we're very appreciative. And she like picked up the books and she started to like walk toward me so that I'm backing up like in a way that's kind of like, like move away, which she had come from around the desk. So I don't know why she needed to move forward, except that it was very much like a thank you for coming, like have a nice day. She assumed I'm going to leave now. But I had come there for more than just to donate some books. I wanted to have a conversation. So I said, I don't know if you received my follow-up email. Sometimes emails don't go through on my website server, which is correct, guys. So if anyone's ever tried to email me and not received one back, it's possible that I'm just overwhelmed and not able to respond. And it's also possible that, there's a server error going on. I don't think it happens often, but it does sometimes happen. And oh, hang on. Hold, please. Check on the goblins here. Okay, sorry about that. Anyway, so I asked her, did you receive my email? She says, oh, yes, I did. And I wanted to tell you, and I'm so sorry. They're starting to come down, I think. So I'm going to have to call the husband and see if he can't rein them in. The boy goblin has recently been potty trained. And so he's been getting out of bed a lot when it's supposed to be bedtime. And it's kind of hard to, hey, love, would you mind taking care of the little guy? Yeah, that's all right. Thank you. So you guys are going to see my husband running by in a white tank top. Yay for everyone, right? So anyway, I asked her, did you receive my email? I feel like I've told that part of the story like 3 times and keep getting derailed. She says, yes, I did. And, I was just thinking, that I don't think that anybody would probably attend something like that. She didn't say it exactly like that, to her credit, she was as polite and cordial as she could possibly be, but it was very clear to me that she didn't want to go for it. She's like, and I think our waiting list is really long. You probably won't be able to do anything until the spring. And I'm like, well, I don't really have time to do anything until winter at the earliest anyway. And she's like, oh, okay. Then the other librarian comes around to the front of the desk, and they're both talking to me. And she's like, well, if you want to teach people how to write. I said, no, actually, I'm not interested in teaching the craft of writing right now so much as just indie publishing and letting our community know what their options are if they ever want to get their book published, but they don't want to go the traditional route. And then the original librarian number one, gestures to my books, and she goes, yeah, well, and she's telling the new librarian who kind of just arrived at the conversation, she says, this young lady went with a small press, and she wants to explain to people how to go with a small press. And I said, no, I did not go with a small press. I'm indie published, which means that I did everything myself. Like, I am my own publisher. And they gave me these very blank looks. And that was the point where I realized that despite the fact that they are librarians, and despite the fact that I had made a lot of presuppositions about them and their awareness level of the publishing world, they don't actually know what indie publishing is at all. I used the word vanity publishing as a comparison to what I do. And then I saw some light bulbs going off, and I'm like, all right, they obviously have some very strongly negative opinions about what this is. I went in to explain, what I was hoping to teach people, that it wasn't the craft, that it was more the publishing side of things. And then I explained why I wanted to do it. I said, I would love it, again, if people knew what their options were, if they could do this. I said, I don't know if you read the material that you copy-pasted to be in your email. I said this to librarian number one, but it went something like this. We don't want books with mold, pests, smoke, etc. on it. We don't want VHS tapes or cassettes. We don't want stacks of old magazines, and we don't want indie books. Any indie books. And the first librarian's mouth kind of dropped as if she didn't know what she had copy-pasted, which is a little weird. Maybe she didn't look at it, I guess, but like she looked genuinely like, oh yeah, that sounds terrible. Or maybe she just never thought of it that way, which I did tell her. I was like, whoever originally authored that list, I'm sure didn't realize how offensive that really sounds. But it did, feel kind of offensive to me as an indie author, is what I said to her. And actually I said to librarian number two, I kind of looked over to her to include her in the conversation. And librarian number two responded by getting we'll say, defensive clip in her voice, and says, well, and she puts her hand out. She's like, you have to understand something. Consider every indie author who's come before you to this library. Like, none of them have ever given us a good book. They've all been awful. And I'm thinking, really? Every single one? All of them? Every single self-published indie book you've ever received in your career working here as a librarian, you've never received one that's, not cringeworthy. Okay. Maybe that's true. I guess I have no true way of knowing for sure. I don't buy it personally, number one. And then number two, I guess maybe she's never been the one who's been receiving the indie books, but both of them were telling me anecdotes of people who will come up and gift them. They're saying like, gift me books of my their indie published books, and they look terrible, and it's kind of like, oh gee, thanks. And they're both kind of telling these stories, and I'm thinking like, you guys have extremely low opinions of what this can be. Now, in their defense, and I did tell them like, I am aware that, every single one of us has seen, the self-published books that need some TLC. But and then I went on to say, but that's part of the reason why I want to do this, because it's not hard to publish. Relatively speaking, it's not something that the average person can't do if they're motivated to do it. But they need help, like I had so much help getting published. I learned from gurus that know they've forgotten more than I'll ever know, the old cliche, and it's true. if I had had somebody in real life, in person, who could have like come alongside me and walked me along and like answered my questions in real time, I just feel like that would have been a huge blessing. And that's what I'm hoping to provide. And if more people had that, I get the feeling that indie publishing would grow even faster than it already has, which is pretty incredible, because it's expanding like crazy as it is. So anyway, I continued the conversation with them. I told them I was nervous. I was shaking at one point. I was just so scared at how I was going to be perceived, and I was on limited time. Like I said, I had to get back before the goblins woke up from their nap. But I gave them my card, and I said, okay, well, if not for, a course or a class, whatever you want to call it, can you guys think of any ways in which I might be able to volunteer, help out, time permitting, that might further, the indie cause? Like, do you guys know of anybody? Do you ever get, I said, as reference librarians, do you ever get community members who come up to you and say that they're trying to publish a book, or that they're having a hard time with querying or whatever it is? They had nothing. Like, neither of them had any suggestions for me, and no names really came to mind. And I'm like, all right. So in addition to ranting, which I feel a little bad for anybody who showed up, maybe you wanted less drama, maybe you wanted a little more, I don't know. But what I'm wondering is, do any of you have any ideas for what somebody like me, who I'd say is at least moderately motivated to make this happen, so to speak? And I'm talking about is to find some way to reach members of my community, to give them some support. I know that we had a writers community in my city that kind of died, and the librarians actually mentioned that. I don't have any way to get a hold of them right now. They said that they would try to look them up for me and see, what any of them are doing. Yeah, so I'm just kind of looking for some ideas right now. I guess I'm a little bit, oh, the elusive father goblin. And worried the pages might be blank. Yeah, I don't know, I don't know what she was thinking as she went through the book. I'm sure she was just making sure it was a complete book, which anybody who's ever gotten a paperback Holland, the thing's thick. It's giant, it'd be pretty hard to find, a very obvious error just by, kind of thumbing through the first few pages, or it's not going to just pop out at you with the number of pages there are. Let's see. Kelly says that list is also probably 10 plus years old, before indie publishing was so big. Yeah. And Talis says it might still be somewhat flooded with those books that need a bit more TLC, but that doesn't mean you can just discount the entire. Yeah, and I think that was what was most frustrating to me, is that the email that I had been reading, which again, for those of you who might have just hopped in on, wrong screen. For those of you who may have just popped in on the screen, this is what they sent me back. They're just outright we can't accept that. Not, it might be a little harder for you, or maybe we have a different path for indie published books if you want to get published. It's just, nope, we don't want it. If you're self-published, don't even bring it to us. I forgot to tell this story. One of the libraries that I contacted, and this is one of the bigger libraries within my state, a male librarian contacted me back, and he said, we don't typically accept indie published book donations. However, if you insist, kind of thing, you can send your books to this address, and you must mail them. There's no drop-off option. You must send them to this address, and if we decide that the books meet our peer-reviewed, standard process, we might put them on our shelves. And if we do, we don't really have time to tell you that we accepted it. I should have brought that email up because it kind of blew my mind. We don't have time to tell you that we accepted it. We can't send you an email. No, thank you, nothing. But you can just check our catalog, and they should show up within 2 months if we decided to accept it. But if we decided not to accept it, we can't tell you that either, so that you can come get the books. And we're also not going to ship the books back to you. So they'll just go into the trash or they'll give them to somebody's niece, I guess. I don't know what happens to the books that they decide to reject. And I don't know. There's just something about this attitude, that I'm kind of like, aren't we beyond this point at all? I mean, obviously we're not. And again, it's easy for me to forget that we're not, because I'm so wrapped up in the indie world and I see how incredible indie authors are, their books. I love this community. And I just kind of expect that the whole world, we all see the world from our own point of view. And to me, it just blows my mind. Ruby Dixon was #1 on Amazon a few weeks ago. She just got a deal for her Ice Planet Barbarians books with Penguin last week. And that's the thing, to my knowledge, Ruby Dixon isn't new to the trad pub, world, but Trad Pub didn't want her Ice Planet Barbarian books when she first wrote them. Again, to my knowledge. But now they do, because they're #1. But even then, they're only publishing the first 2 books in paperback. And for anyone who reads Ice Planet Barbarians, it's like a 20-book series or something like crazy long like that. And the only reason I can imagine why they would only do the first 2 books, unless Ruby didn't want to give it to them. I don't know everything about this situation. I'm sure, some of you might even know more than I do. But they're afraid of taking on the risk of publishing these books that might not sell that well. And it just, again, it blows my mind that people who are educated or should be educated about the reader world, like Penguin or librarians, they should be aware of what people are interested in reading that they don't seem to know. I don't understand it. Can somebody explain this to me? And hold on, I'm going to go ahead and look at the chat again. Lily says, wow, that's ridiculous. I agree. Kelly says, maybe try to get a sign-up sheet of people who would want to come to the event and show. That's a good idea, Kelly, because if it is going to be like I think she said that the deadline to apply for like a May class, to hold a May class, is January. That's a lot of time I can have a sign-up sheet available at the library that... Hopefully, if I can get the librarians on my side. I don't know if I did a great job of that today. Everything was polite. I don't want to misrepresent the situation, but it was very clear to me that the attitude was not overly positive toward what I am or what I do. But if they're on my side, maybe they can kind of push that clipboard over to anybody who says, that's something that I'd like to do, or just to be a writer. Talus says, my library has grown to become very supportive of local authors and indie authors too in recent years. The librarians I've met there are so far truly awesome. I'm so glad to hear that. I wonder if they can pass along their new viewpoint to fellow librarians somehow. Gosh, that would be nice. I don't know where you live, Talus, but I wish. You know what? I bet my library would take your books. Oh, I should request they buy a set. I have a mission. And that reminds me, actually, Talus, and everyone else who's listening, I was going to ask, and this is something that I did ask in my newsletter, although a lot of people probably aren't going to see it because it's such a long newsletter. Not as long as 2 weeks ago, but it's still pretty long because I was trying to condense everything I've talked about into, a little thing. If you guys are members of your local libraries and you don't mind taking a minute, if you could, again, this is a favor I'm asking, request the Dokiri Brides books, whether that's paperback. Personally, I would love, love, love to see my books in the Overdrive app in audio or ebook. That really increases exposure. As a longtime user of the Overdrive app myself, especially for audiobooks, I do love audiobooks, but let's face it, they're very expensive. Getting the audiobooks into the Overdrive app would just be a dream come true, because I know that, that many more people would be getting introduced into the series and could move along as Podium continues to publish their audio titles. And Kelly says, even authors who have been trad pub for decades have gone hybrid. And yes, oh my gosh, guys, I could do another live stream. How many people are even watching right now? 6? That's good to me. Yeah, I could do a whole live stream about this, about the fact that trad pub authors are going hybrid. Some of them want to go full-time indie. They're very deep into that trad pub world, though, and it's hard. Some people can't even leave by choice, and that's another thing that we could talk about. I don't know what I can do. I guess other than, the ideas I've already had, if I could get my, just more indie books into the library, that would be awesome. I know that I use my Overdrive app and every once in a while because you can request books, like I think 6 titles a month or something like that through the Overdrive app. I intentionally will go through the list of indie authors that I know, even people whose books I haven't read, but authors that I'm just aware of. And if they don't have their titles, which they almost never do, I will go ahead and recommend those titles. Just to support my fellow indie authors, and because I really, really want the reader world at large to take indie a little more seriously, because I think the people are missing out. And I did talk about Ruby Dixon to the librarians today. Maybe that wasn't, the best choice, because I know Ruby's books can be a little out there for the traditional reader, but the point I was trying to make is that what I love maybe most about the indie world, I love a lot of things about the indie world, and what I maybe love most about it is the fact that anybody who has a story they want to tell can get that story out there. I have headphones in, so I can't exactly hear very well what's going on out here. And in addition to that, anybody who wants to read something that's a little, again, out there, that's a little different, something that maybe trad publishers wouldn't take a chance on, they can go find it with the world of indie. Sorry, guys, I'm going to have to call on the husband one more time. He's having a good old time. Oh, he's already coming up here. You heard him, I see.
I did.
Okay. Again, anybody who has a story that they want to tell that's a little out there, anybody who has a story that they want to read that's a little bit out there, they can find it with indie publishing. And that's just something you can't do when you're limited to TradPub. And that was the world we lived in, let's face it, 20 years ago, before we had Amazon and before we had easy publishing options like this. I don't like the gatekeeper idea, I find that it's the case in TradPub that they have this very outdated attitude of we are the gatekeepers of quality. And if the quality isn't up to snuff, we won't let the public be exposed to it. But here's the thing, what they call quality, again, is often just what they think is worth reading. If they think it's too out there, whatever the case it may be, they're not going to publish it. And back when, we weren't able to have any other say, no other options out there besides to just roll with the punches, we got a lot of Regency romance, we got a lot of Highlander romance. I love both of these genres, by the way. I'm not crapping on them. But we didn't get a lot of variation outside of, contemporary sweet stuff. And you guys get what I'm saying. The more people who know that they can do this, that they can do the indie thing, the wider and wider the variety of ideas that we're going to start seeing showing up on our Amazon pages, on our Kindle readers, on our shelves. And this is something that I think I don't want to overblow it, because I know at the end of the day it's entertainment, but entertainment is important. I think that, writing, being able to tell a story, to be able to entertain people, to let them escape from their lives for a little bit and kind of delve into somebody else's mind and their point of view. And I think it's important. But it's moving slowly, more slowly than I would like for it to be. So I'll get off my soapbox a little bit here. I am probably going to start trying to wrap up this stream a little bit, but I want to read comments first. And while I'm catching up on comments, if any of you have questions, whether they're related to the subject or not, feel free to go, because otherwise I'm just going to ramble all night and probably continue to repeat things I've already said. So let's see here. Yeah, Ruby has a secret TradPub pen name. I was aware of that. Yeah, she's not new to the TradPub scene, but a lot of people don't know that. Lily says, of course they're afraid, but if enough people show interest, they figure they can do one or two and go from there. I can understand from a business point of view not wanting to lose money, but you can't have a successful business without risk. Yes, I agree. But the thing that kills me is that it's like her books were literally #1, and they sat there for at least a few days. That's incredibly hard to do. For anyone who's ever watched the charts, to get a book at #1 and to have it sit there for more than, 12 hours, That's really, really impressive. And so for the people at Penguin who should know that, for them to be this cautious and just kind of like dipping, you know, a little pinky toe in there as if they're going to lose all this money, it just feels a little obtuse to me. Like they are willfully just making up their minds that this is a risky thing. And honestly, it's not risky. Ruby Dixon has been making bank and selling so many books for years now. This isn't new. You know, she became #1 because she got boosted on TikTok. And we all know TikTok is a booming platform right now. But she's a safe bet, and it kills me. It kills me that, you know, they're being so cautious about this. Kelly says, yeah, the funny thing is the risk is almost non-existent. Exactly. Yes. The books are already super popular. Yep, Lily, exactly. Talus salutes. Opens Overdrive in a new tab. I'm in North Carolina. Thank you, Talus. And it's something I should mention. I don't know if your guys, I'm not in North Carolina, but I don't know if your guys' Overdrive works the way that mine does, but I will often type in indie authors' names and no books will show up. Even, you know, because if you want to you can type in an author's name and often they'll say, we don't own these titles, but you can recommend them. Now, when I checked in my state, my name was not popping up for recommendable titles. I don't know if that's because it requires a certain number of recommendations before they'll even put it on the Overdrive list of books that they're considering, and then they look for more recommendations before they'll actually purchase it for the catalog. I don't know if that's the way it works or what, but from what I understand, because I did a little more research, in order to get things moving, the most effective thing to do sometimes is to actually call, visit, or email your librarian directly. Most library websites have a link on their website where you can specifically request a book. You know, they'll have like a contact form that's specifically for requesting this book in this format. So that is an option. I feel so shy, like laying out all these instructions because I feel like it's a lot to do for anybody. I know we all have 1,000 things, you know, vying for our time, but it is an option if you're interested in helping me out there, or any other indie author for that matter. Because like I said, whether I read the indie authors' books or not, if they're books that I'm interested in or authors that I know and love, I recommend them whenever I can. Melissa says, our library does Indie Spotlight Author Monthly. I'm jealous. I'm going to add you to request list and see if we can get more exposure. Thank you, Melissa. That's great. I'm jealous. Apparently there are some libraries out there who are very good to their indies, and I love it. Talus says, I've used The Martian by Andy Weir as a non-romance genre example of an indie author that ended up with huge success, not only with a book deal, but a major movie. Yes, Andy Weir. Oh, we all love the indie. Oh, fun fact, Podium actually published Andy Weir's audiobook first. That's kind of like their thing that they brag about first on their website. Like, you know, we may not be like, you know, like maybe I know when people think of audiobooks that the first publisher they jump to is probably Tantor, but you know, it's Tantor, Podium. Obviously the big five have their own indie. What are the other? Gosh, now I'm showing my ignorance. I know there's a couple other, but they're not coming off the top of my head. But Podium's very proud of Andy, and I would be too. Lily Ulrich. I loved my library when I lived in Florida, but don't exactly love the ones near me here. Especially librarians who make you feel unwelcome. Yeah, my local library when I was a teenager had this one librarian. I never saw the woman smile one single time, and I used to go a couple times a week when I was a teenager. She always had this like little bob haircut, and her nose, the tip of her nose, was always super red for some reason. And I don't know if maybe it was because she works in a library, and like I know libraries can be very dry, what with all the paper laying around. But she always had this like she was just flat miserable. And I would make a game of trying to get her to smile. So I'd go up to the counter and I'd just be as bubbly as I could and try to like engage her in conversation. And I'll tell you what, ladies, she would have none of it. I should go back there one of these days and see if she's still around. And maybe I could get her to smile this time. Melissa says, that's awesome. Okay, so we have some people who live in the same areas. And then South. Okay, sorry. I won't read that part out loud just in case. And then, yeah. Audible. So. All right. Well, it looks like I'm going to go ahead and wrap up this stream. This went on for 45 minutes, guys. Thank you for tuning in. I was afraid nobody would show up, and I apologize for it being a few minutes later. I'm trying to get the hang of this streaming. I know you guys see my little profile here. It's a little fancier, I guess, than the average, normal stream that I've seen, but I'm trying to like step up my production game. So hopefully, I'll come up with some more ideas we can do in the future. If you guys have any ideas of things you want to see me do live or read live or chat live, you know where to find me. Join my group. I think I linked it on this post somewhere that, can join Denali's Damsels. Probably, actually, I think you guys all are members, but yeah. Anyway, thank you so much. I'm going to go ahead and go. It was great. Night.